Hey guys, it's Rainhead back, and today we're going to be talking about item levels in the Bazaar. So in the last build that you guys saw, all the items in the game had levels on them. Basically, you could find a dagger early in the game that's maybe level 1 and has a pretty weak amount of damage that it deals. But then late game, you could find a level 10 dagger, the same card basically, but with a bigger damage number, for example, like a stronger version of itself. And every item in the game had this property. We had, up to 30 levels on cards, and you could keep upgrading an item or finding stronger versions of items you already have as you played a run. We put this system in the game because we realized that since the Bazaar is all about deck building, it's about building your row of items, the game became much less fun when you couldn't build anymore. You might see this problem happen in auto battlers, for example, when you're late game and you're mostly just re-rolling and maybe looking for one unit to swap out occasionally. And we feel like when you're not continuing to develop your build, the game starts being less fun. So we wanted the players to basically be building the entire time they played without hitting a ceiling. And level system kind of gave us that indefinite ceiling, right? Throughout a run, it would be impossible to max out the levels on a full build. You'd have to kind of pick and choose which of your items you'd want to over-index on and have be more powerful. Now, there were a couple issues we were trying to address with this system, mostly just having that indefinite building. And this level system did check that box, but after we implemented it and started playing with it, we noticed that it had some problems that we didn't really account for before trying it. So first of all, leveling up your items, like going to some sort of blacksmith and then paying them to make the level of your item go up, it just wasn't that fun. You're basically just doing like flat damage buffs or flat healing buffs, flat output buffs. It just wasn't that interesting of an upgrade. It didn't really change the behavior of the card, it just made a number bigger. So we felt like the upgrading component of the game wasn't as fun as it could be. This also introduced another issue where, since we had to scale every item by 30 levels, the spectrum of numbers in the game was pretty wide. You'd start early game with a weapon that might do, 1 damage every couple seconds. But by the time you're late game, that same item at level 30 would be doing like 50 per attack or 100 per attack. And when you have a range of numbers this wide, it's really hard to know what numbers mean what. Like, this is a very hard problem to describe. Basically, in a game like Hearthstone, I know that a 6/6 minion is pretty big because I know that, on average, most minions are like 3 4s or 4 5s, and that's just generally bigger than most stuff. But in the Bazaar, since every item had 30 levels, we had such a crazy range of numbers. If you saw an item at like level 18 that healed you for 50 on cooldown, it's hard to evaluate that at face value against other items because the range of numbers is just too big. You kind of just started lumping things into 3 main categories, obscenely big number, medium-ish number, tiny, irrelevant number. And we feel like by tightening the range of levels, tightening the spectrum of numbers that we use, we can make every buff feel more exciting. Every incremental number change would feel more meaningful. And you'd know how good a card is at face value, most importantly. So if I saw that a weapon did, 5 damage every 5 seconds, I would know, oh, okay, that's pretty reasonable for a small weapon. As opposed to the previous system where, depending on which point in the game you are, maybe that kind of output was good, maybe it wasn't. It was very hard to tell until you went into a fight and won or lost. So yeah, we basically recognized that the system we implemented had these issues and we wanted to address them. One of the first systems that came to mind to help address this was a Rarity System. And this is something that's pretty familiar to a lot of players because it's a pretty traditional game mechanic in all sorts of games. You have some common items, some rarer items with maybe more powerful or more exotic effects. And we thought that we could still kind of get what we wanted the level system to do out of a rarity system. We felt like maybe it would still feel like you're indefinitely improving your build if even if you have a full board of common items, you still could look for rares that are more powerful to replace them, but maybe you want to keep some of your commons. We thought that in a way this could basically raise the time that it takes to achieve full build. Maybe not as effectively as the level system we had before, but in a way that was more fun. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. So for our first attempt, we basically put 3 rarities into the game. We had common items, uncommon items, and rare items. And they cost 1, 2, and 3 gold respectively. Everything, you could buy it for that cost, for 1 gold, for 2 gold, or 3 gold for a rare. You could sell it for full price. We also decided to partition our item pool a little bit. So rather than shuffling up every card in the game and showing them to you at any stage, we decided to have rare items show up later and at higher and higher frequencies the later in a run that you went. We feel like this rarity system could create a more fun play pattern where rather than like committing to a build early and then spending the entire game leveling up a couple items, now your build would constantly change because in order to improve your build, you had to swap your items out. So you're actually meaningfully changing the effect and what your build is doing as the game goes on. Right now, this is still one of the first builds we have with this rarity system. So we're still getting a feel for it, but the more that we've played with it, the more we've kind of realized first of all, a couple lessons. The price difference between 1, 2, and 3, at least with the level of income that we had, didn't really feel like they cost different amounts. It kind of felt like all rarities were equally accessible at any point. So we felt like, maybe we could experiment with a broader range or like a bigger gap in prices. Maybe rares would cost 5 or commons would cost 1. The other lesson we kind of learned is that uncommons didn't really feel like they had a place. They further partitioned the card pool because as soon as you label some things as uncommons, maybe you're not showing that to a player on the first couple encounters of the game. So, instead of drafting from a 100 card pool, they're drafting from like 40. So uncommons kind of had a little bit of a drawback, right? They further partitioned the pool into different rarities, but we didn't really feel like they were contributing much. We felt like having rares, like exciting, flashy, powerful cards made a lot of sense. It's kind of that feeling of like opening a booster pack and seeing if you'll get power in a draft. We wanted to preserve that feeling. We think rares can help do that. But uncommons, they didn't really have that exciting factor. And they just like further partitioned, they split up the common pool of cards, which we could instead present to the player at all stages of the game, increase replayability, diversity, variety of builds. So I think the next build we're gonna test, and we haven't implemented this yet, but we're gonna try a simple 2 rarity system where we've already mapped it out and relabeled cards as this, but in a 2 rarity system, basically most items in the game would be commons. They would cost maybe 1 gold, and then the rares would be a subset of cards that are more exotic and more powerful, and maybe each merchant would have 1 guaranteed. So sometimes, you'd be presented with options you couldn't afford. And we're gonna get a feel for this and try it out, but we think this is definitely going in the right direction, and we really think that the way that you build up throughout a run has been increasingly getting more fun the more we iterate on it. So we're pretty excited to just keep making it better, keep following that North Star of making the most fun strategy game we can. And we just thought this was kind of a cool little challenge we had to overcome. We tried a couple systems, and as we show you guys our newer build here in the very near future, figured I wanted to explain why we changed that system. So I thought this might be interesting to some of you guys. But yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for subbing. Thanks for following the Discord and Reddit. And thank you to all of you guys that are just part of the community and engaging and giving your feedback, asking questions. I know I'm not always the most directly communicative, but this stuff does mean the world, and we do read it. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you back on another Friday for another update video of The Bazaar.